welcome to my August wrap-up. This month I'm doing things a little bit differently. From one book to the next, I get so absorbed into one book and then move into the next book and really just kind of, forget all the details of my prior books that I've read. It's just easy to be able to get absorbed into the next book or the current read. So what I'm trying this month is something a little bit different. As I finish each book, I will sit down and record my thoughts, my impressions, the rating that I had rated that book for the month, and give you some fresh thoughts after just being finished with that book. Specifically for the month. So I think we'll be meeting here most likely for all of the book wrap-ups that I do as I finish each one. So I'll take you throughout the month and you'll be meeting with me throughout that. So let's jump into the first book. We have Book Lovers by Emily Henry. This is the second book that I've read by this author. The first one was Beach Read, and I absolutely loved it. I will definitely be reading that one again, probably next summer. Such a good summery read. Anyway, this one is about two sisters. So Nora is one of the sisters. She has a sister, Libby. They lost their mom when they were younger, when they were teens. And all they have is each other. And throughout the book, you are reading about this adventure that they go on to a small town, specifically a small town. She is a literary agent for authors. And one of her authors wrote about this small town. Does it say Sunshine Falls, I think it is. They end up going to this town and they create, the younger sister, Libby, she creates a list of things for her older sister, Nora, who's a little bit uptight, a little bit of a workaholic. She's single, really doesn't have a whole lot going on in her life other than her career. And her younger sister has created this list for things to do, such as go on some dates and wear flannel and go on horseback rides and stuff like that. Most of this book is actually in that small town talking about that adventure that they go on together. And over here is Charlie. They work together. So really, it's a good read. I did like it. I gave this a 3.75 though, because I just wasn't like super eager to get through it like I was some of my other books. I was tandem reading this with an audiobook and I was a lot more interested in that other audiobook. So I don't know, maybe I'm just a comparison, or maybe because I loved her first book so much. This one was good. I liked it. I mean, I stayed up late reading it and I liked the characters. I saw myself a little bit in Nora in various aspects of that. I don't know. I know a book is good when it takes me like 2 days to get through it. This one took me maybe 6 or 7, so I did enjoy it. I would recommend it. And that was this first book of the month. So we'll see what's next. The next book that I read this month was Divine Rivals. This is actually the audiobook that I was telling you about with the previous one that I had started listening halfway through. This one was amazing. This is by Rebecca Ross. It's a fantasy. For me, it was a gateway book. You know, like gateway book for me into fantasy. I have read or listened to other fantasy books on audiobook years ago, and wasn't necessarily my jam, but I did hear about this book and I saw some reviews on it. I was like, you know what, that sounds interesting. Let me just listen to it on audiobook, see if I'm gonna like it, and that way I can get through it. I'm not stuck with reading the physical book if I really just don't like it. So this one I borrowed from the library, actually, through the Cloud Library app, and listened to it on audiobook, and it was amazing. I think this is actually one reason why I rated my prior book 3.75, because I was more interested in this book. And my only regret with this book is reading this book before the second one comes out, because I have multiple months at this point where I need to wait before I can see what happens with Iris and Roman in this next in this next book. So here's the gist. There is a girl. She is 18. Her name is Iris Winnow. She lives in poverty. She works at a newspaper. In Oath is the name of her town. And at the newspaper, she has a rival that works there named Roman Kit. The two of them are competing for the same position, a promotion to columnist for this specific newspaper. So that's a little bit of the beginning of the book, and you kind of see how they are interacting with each other. Well, come to find out that Iris has this typewriter that allows her to type notes and letters or really whatever she wants, and it gets to another person magically. And it's so awesome for her to be able to uncover that and realize what's going on there. She has a brother that is off to war, and she's been writing him letters periodically, and she was just putting them away, not realizing that they were disappearing into being read by someone else. So, oh gosh, it's just fascinating. One thing about this book is the imagery is amazing. You really get a sense of what's going on, and you can picture it, and you can see her, and you can see the other characters, and when it's gloomy, you understand, and it's just, the imagery is amazing. But there's not a whole lot of wasted time on those details. You know, when there's a book and there's just so much detail that you're like, okay, get to like the next point. This has just that right amount. So absolutely fantastic. Also, I found myself so I finished this last night. I have been listening to this every single chance I get. If I have 10 minutes in between a meeting, I will listen to 10 minutes of this. If I'm taking a break, out in the backyard or whatever it may be with my dog, then I am listening to it at that time. If I'm going to the gym, I am listening to this instead of music. On my way to and from drop off for the kids, I am listening to this. It was absolutely amazing. Last night I sat on the couch for an hour and a half just listening to the audiobook, not watching TV, not doing anything. It was just listening to the book. It was absolutely amazing. I haven't wanted to start my next book actually, because I kind of just want to live in the cloud of this book, and I keep thinking constantly about these characters and the book, and it was just a really cool place to be. I have not been impacted by a book like this, so it's just a cool spot to be in. I am, like I said, I borrowed this book from the library on audiobook. I am going to purchase a physical copy just so I can have it. And I'm also going to pre-order the next book that comes out in December, so I have a copy of it as well. There are times in the book where you are something is unfolding and the main character Iris is not quite sure what to think about it, and you find yourself like telling her or willing her to be like, oh, look at the good, this is actually good that's happening, or no, like, don't you see it? That's not right. It just, you're trying to guide her through your thoughts subconsciously as it relates to, I know this is not good for you, don't make that decision, or yes, just, give this a chance and it will work out. It's really cool to be able to, cheer on or try and communicate with someone in a book like that. You probably guessed it, I rated this book 5 stars. So amazing. I absolutely cannot wait to read the next book. I get the impression that there's only 2 in the series, just the first and second. Details of the second book have been released, so I feel satisfied at least to be able to read those couple paragraphs as to what the next book is about and understanding where that's going to take us. So not as much of a cliffhanger as if those details weren't released, but such a good book. If you like fantasy, you'll love this book. If you don't like fantasy, you will love this book. I'm definitely going to choose more books from Rebecca Ross to read more and check out. So yeah, I can't say enough good things, and we'll see what the next book holds. Hello, we are back with the next book. This one is November 9 by Colleen Hoover. I read a few books of hers last month, and I think this is the first that I've read of hers this month. It's wild. I can never remember one book from the next, and that's why I'm doing the formatting for this month, for the month of August, is as I finish a book, I will just provide some information and stats, because it's so fresh in my mind, and before I get absorbed and just into the next book, and I can never remember what I read before that. Anyway, this one is a shorter one. It's about 300 pages. This is written from 2 points of view, from Fallon and Benton. He goes by Ben in the book. Fallon is an 18-year-old girl. When she was 16, she was in a house fire that burnt about half of her body. And the book uncovers the connection between Ben and Fallon, how they meet, and how he helps her with her confidence. She has a lot of visible scars on her body. And you go through the journey of them. They meet at a cafe by chance on November 9th. And throughout the book, you are following them along every year on November 9th. They don't have any contact throughout the year. They made a pact. They meet every year on November 9th to check in and see how they're doing, and to just really interact, because they haven't had any interaction all year by any social media. They don't have each other's email addresses or phone numbers or anything like that. It explains why they have an attraction to each other, and she just wants to be able to grow up a little bit before she decides that she wants to fall in love or really be impacted in that way in her life, with some advice that her mom had gave her. So you are following this book, both of their points of views, on 4 or 5 years of November 9th. And this is an important date for both of them. It is the anniversary of when she had that house fire, and then also you'll find out it's an anniversary for him as well, for something else. So yeah, definitely an interesting book, following you through that. The subject matter is heavy. It was a little bit hard to read sometimes, because it was just so serious and so heavy and so, a little bit of a Debbie Downer. So that was kind of an interesting spin. One thing that I really liked about this book is the overlap of characters. I recently read Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover, and Miles and Tate were the main characters in that book, and Miles and Tate are actually they show up in this book as well. This book did feel like it's fiction, but it did feel like fiction. It felt a little bit fake. It felt a little bit, is that really possible? So just take that with what you will. I knew I was reading fiction. I didn't expect this to be real or anything like that, but sometimes you get caught up in some books and you think about characters for weeks and days and their story, and as if they were real people. This is not that. You can move on from the book and then start your next one. Overall, I thought this book was a little bit underwhelming. I've read Colleen Hoover before, and there's some books where I've been on the edge of my seat, or I'm absolutely falling in love with characters. This was not that. I did finish it in a couple days. I would say in the first 50 pages, I was like, do I want to keep reading this? I'm glad I did. I'm not one to not finish a book just because I finished things. But I did feel a little bit underwhelmed. I rated it a 3. I'm not sure if I would recommend it, so maybe that means that I need to rate it a 2, 2.5. I don't know, somewhere. I feel bad giving kind of ratings that low, but yeah, just not the Colleen Hoover book for me. I'm glad that I read it. I will still be reading some of her other books I have on my TBR, but that's how this book went. So November 9 by Colleen Hoover was my next read for August, and on to the next. Okay, next up. The next book that I read for the month of August was The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. This was such a funny book. I checked it out on Goodreads beforehand, and there's some mixed reviews. Some people thought it was okay, some people loved it, some people it wasn't the book for them. This is a book about 2 sisters and 2 brothers, actually. The sisters are Amy and Olive. They are twins. The book is mostly about Olive, actually. And the two brothers are Ethan and Dane. One of the sisters and one of the brothers gets married, so Amy and Dane get married. And at their wedding, everyone gets food poisoning except for Olive and Ethan. So the couple that just got married, they can't go on their honeymoon. They have a really bad sickness, a food illness. And so they suggest that Olive and Ethan go on the honeymoon to Maui, actually. And so what you're doing for most of the book is you are seeing Ethan and Olive on the honeymoon. The twist is that Ethan and Olive do not like each other. There is so much banter back and forth in this book. I was soaking it up. I was thinking, I was like, you know what, my husband and I, we need to be a little bit more sarcastic. It was so much fun reading their banter back and forth. I smiled through most of this book. I thought it was just absolutely hilarious. The last maybe 80 to 100 pages, there's some drama between the family, and you go through that and you read all about that and you figure all of that out. But this was a really good book. I definitely liked, like I said, the banter, the humor. I was laughing out loud probably a dozen times, and I read most of the book with a smile on my face. I think I said that. It was a fun book. This was an easy read. It's summer right now. It's still gonna be hot for a little while in Arizona, and I loved reading it during the summer. I don't know, there's something that's more enjoyable about people that are on vacation and in their bathing suits and on the beach when that's a possibility for you too. When the summer matches up with your summer, or when the season essentially matches up with your season. Maybe that's part of being a mood reader. I'm not sure, but I was definitely in the mood for this book. My last book was really heavy, and so I was looking for something a little bit more lighthearted, and boy, this really filled up my cup. I really liked it. I don't think I've read a book of Christina Lauren's before, so I guess this was a debut book for me to be acquainted with her. And you know what? I'm one of those weird people that when I finish a book, I will read everything. I'll read the epilogue, I will read the acknowledgments, everything at the end. I'm just not ready for a book to end. Most of the time I'm not ready for a book to end, and so I just read absolutely everything that's in the book. And this one, I was reading the acknowledgments, and it sounded like they kept saying we, and I was like, what on earth? Who are we? Come to find out, I did not know this. You guys will have to let me know if you knew this, that Christina Lauren is actually a pair of authors. Let me see. It said Christina Hobbs and Lauren Billings. So I did not know that. Their name, Christina Lauren, is their pen name. So they're longtime writers. Here's the two of them. So yeah, I thought that was very interesting. I did not know that before. Overall, I rated this book 4.5 stars. I loved it. I would recommend it. I will probably go back to read this book next summer or summer coming up just to have a good read. This is a good beach read, a good vacation read. It was a lot of fun. I loved the journey of Olive and Ethan as they're on the vacation, the journey of Dane and Amy. No spoilers, but we've all had one of those, right? This was a good one. The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren was my next read for August. My next August read was by Alice Feeney, Rock, Paper, Scissors. I flew through this book. I think I read it 2 days, 3 days, something like that. I had the week off work, and I said, I'm going to spend a lot of time reading, and I did, and this is one of the books that I read during that week vacation that I had. This was quite different from my last book. It was a thriller, and it was so easy to read. Before you knew it, you had read 20 pages, 50 pages, 100 pages. It was so easy to get through. Funny story about this book. This book was creepy, scary. The first, I don't know, maybe 120, 130 pages I read at night. There was actually a thunderstorm. It was the perfect setting for this type of book. I was genuinely a little bit creeped out. I was like, maybe I need to read this during the day. The first half of this book really keeps you on your toes. So this book is about a man and a wife, Mr. and Mrs. Wright. So Adam and his wife Amelia you learn a little bit about their marriage and how it's not doing so great, and how they go to, it's actually right here, this little chapel that was transitioned into a house. They win a trip to that for the weekend, and they both go in with the expectations of saving their marriage. The novel takes place at that little chapel, and boy, is it weird. As you make your way through this book, you get through about 2/3 of it before you start getting any types of answers. So your mind is just running wild. You are trying to connect all the dots. Those dots are wrong. It was impossible to be able to track it back to what takes place. You are left to pick up on some hints and think about what should be happening, and that's what leads you to make some assumptions. And that is why I think this book was so great, was because there was enough mystery where you started to try and, like I said, connect all of the dots that you could and come up with your own story. And then in that story you figure out another detail and you're like, oh dang, what I thought, that couldn't have been it. Maybe it has to be something else. So you come up with another version and that ends up being it. When you find it out towards the end, there's no way that you would have been able to think that that happened, or that that is the person that was behind it all, or that's essentially how it unfolds. So very fascinating for this to be able to unravel in the last 50 pages of the book. Like I said, this book really plays on your assumptions and what you think. It's a novel that you kind of create your own experience with. So even though I read it really quickly, I definitely wanted to be able to find out what was happening, and I had plan A, plan B, plan C. I had so many different theories in such a short amount of time trying to figure out what was occurring, and overall it made it such a fantastic read. So I rated this one 4 stars. It was my first Alice Feeney book, and I will definitely be picking up another book by her soon. Okay, my next book that I read was Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. I actually listened to this one on audiobook. It was about 11 hours to listen to it fully. This is a book about 2 main characters, Cameron and Tova. Cameron is a 30-something-year-old guy that is trying to figure out who he is and what is going on with his life. And Tova is in her 60s or 70s. She lives up in Washington. He lives in California, Southern California, I think. And they don't know each other. You follow the 2 of them for a little while separately, and they do eventually interact. Also, a part of the book is a giant octopus. A giant Pacific octopus is what it's referred to. His name is Marcellus. You hear from his point of view every now and then, which is kind of cool. And this is a literary fiction book. So there's not any type of thing you're trying to uncover, or there's no real end goal that you're working towards. You're trying to just kind of discover what the book is about. Some of my first impressions that I had about the book is that it's slow. Like I said, I listened to this on audiobook. I can't imagine what it would have been like if I was reading the physical copy. It was really slow. I was in like 7 of the 11 hours before it started to pick up a little bit, or maybe before I started to get interested a little bit in the content. So it was slow for me. One thing about this book, there are a lot of characters. Like I said, you're following Tova, who's up in Washington. You're learning about her friends, her family, her background. You're learning about Cameron, who is down in California. You're learning about his family, his friends, his background. There's a lot of people, a lot of characters to keep straight. And with that comes a lot of detail. There's a lot of imagery within this specific book. Almost a little bit too much imagery. Or too much detail. Too many characters, too much detail. It was easy to get lost in that a little bit. Also, the front of the book, as you can see, has an octopus on the front. And I really thought that the octopus was going to have a larger part in the book. The octopus ends up doing something that is significant, which is absolutely valuable to the book. I just thought that he would actually be a main character. He felt kind of like a sub-character a little bit. He had a really small portion of the book where you were listening to his point of view. It was fantastic. The specific audiobook Tova had one voice, one narration, and then Marcellus had another narration, so someone completely different that stepped in for the audiobook, so that was kind of cool to listen to. And the octopus had a different way of speaking. He was so proper, so that was kind of cool. Overall, the book was a lot longer than I think it needed to be. I think it could have easily shaved off 200 pages, like a significant shave off of time for characters we didn't need to learn about, for details we didn't need to know. This was a longer book than what you were getting out of it. I'm part of various groups online that make book recommendations, and this is one of them that someone had said this was fantastic to listen to on audiobook, or that it was a 5-star read. Folks just really loved it, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna listen to this one. And it was available at the library, and so I took a listen, and I just wasn't impressed. I have never rated a book this low, but I would honestly say, for me, my style, what I like reading, I would say this is a 1 star. I would not recommend this. Literary fiction is not my jam. I don't know what I was thinking listening to this, reading this. It just was so highly recommended. Another book that I read that was literary fiction was Eleanor Oliphant or something like that. Is completely fine. That was another book that was a big struggle for me. If there's not something to figure out, there is a little bit of mystery in this book, but if there's not a main thing keeping me coming back to it, then I had a hard time with it. It's not my style to DNF a book. I do want to finish it. Maybe it would have gotten better at the end. There was a little bit of mystery that was solved, and that was a nice ending, but yeah, I'd say the last 2 hours, I put the audio on a quicker speed just to be able to get done and over with it sooner. So overall, not my cup of tea. I hope you enjoyed that formatting. That was a little bit different this month, getting some hot off the press feedback and thoughts as it relates to the books that I loved and maybe didn't love so much. If you liked this type of formatting, definitely let me know. If there is a book that you loved that I didn't, or a book that I loved that you didn't, I'd love to hear some feedback as to why. If you let me know down in the comments. If there is a book that I need to add to my TBR right away, please let me know what it is. I'm always looking for some fresh recommendations. I do stalk Goodreads actually a little bit as I'm looking for new books to see what those ratings are. And last month read so many wonderful books, and this month had a little bit more of a roller coaster, which I kind of enjoyed seeing how they all turned out. So again, thank you so much for the wrap up for the month of August, and I'll see you guys next month.